The rain pounded hard against the glass of the greenhouse, filling the air with the smell of wet earth. Miguel felt his hands dirty with dirt, but at that moment it didn't matter. It was late. He knew he had to leave, but he just couldn't. Helena was there, so close, and seemed as lost as he was. "You need to go, Michael." Her voice came out low, almost like a request. He watched her. The dim light illuminated his delicate face, but his eyes carried something Miguel couldn't ignore. Fear. Doubt. I wish. "And you?" he asked, without looking away. "Are you going to keep pretending that none of this is happening?" Helena forced a smile, but it disappeared quickly. "I don't pretend. I just can't let that happen." Miguel felt a tightness in his chest. I had tried to fight this feeling so many times, but it was impossible. And now, with her there, so close, the air felt heavy, loaded with everything they had never said to each other. He stepped forward. Helena retreated, but her hand touched a shelf full of vases, preventing her from continuing to move away. The smell of freshly pruned roses mingled with her soft scent. "Then tell me that it doesn't mean anything," he insisted, his voice hoarse. "He says he never thought of me when he's not around." Helena closed her eyes for a moment, taking a deep breath. When he opened them, Miguel saw the clear answer there, shining like a secret kept for too long. "I think," she whispered, "and that scares me." For a second, no one moved. The only sound was that of rain outside. Then Helena raised her hand slowly and touched Miguel's face with her fingertips. It was a small gesture, but loaded with everything they felt and could never say. And Miguel gave in. The kiss was quick but intense. It tasted of wine and fear, of desire and regret. But it was short-lived. Helena pulled away suddenly, her eyes wide, her breath choked. "No, we can't." She put her hand to her lips, as if she wanted to erase what had just happened. Before Miguel could answer, a noise echoed through the greenhouse, a snap. Someone was there. Miguel turned quickly to look at the door, but only saw the light reflected on the wet glass. His heart raced. "Who's there?" he called, feeling a shiver run through his body. No one answered, just the noise of the rain. Helena grabbed his arm tightly, her eyes full of panic. "Go now," she whispered. Miguel hesitated for a second, but he knew he had to obey. He left through the side door of the greenhouse, feeling his heart beating strongly in his chest. Before disappearing into the night, he looked back. Helena remained in the same place, with her hand on her lips, as if holding a dangerous secret. He didn't know it yet, but that was the last time he would see her the same way. The love that had blossomed in the garden was about to be suffocated by something much greater. The next morning, Miguel arrived early in the garden of the mansion. He tried to act as usual, but something inside him was different. Last night's kiss didn't leave her mind, nor the fear in Helena's eyes. With his sleeves folded and his hands buried in the dirt, he struggled to keep his head at work. He pruned the rose bushes, pulled weeds, but his thoughts insisted on returning to that greenhouse, to the soft touch of her lips on his. "Goodbye, Miguel." The female voice made her heart race for a moment, but when she raised her head, she saw that it was not Helena. It was Clara, her sister. She was standing next to a bed of white lilies, watching him with a watchful eye. Unlike Helena, who always carried an air of sweetness and mystery, Clara was direct. His face was expressive, and his eyes were razor-sharp. "Good morning, Mrs. Clara," Miguel replied, wiping his hands on his pants. "You look tired," she commented, tilting her head. "Did you have a difficult night?" Miguel felt a lump in his throat. Was there something hidden in those words? Or was it just your fault talking too loudly? "No big deal," he replied, trying to sound unconcerned. "I'm only busy with the garden." Clara didn't say anything right away. She just kept watching him, as if trying to decipher something. Then he bent down and plucked a red rose from the bush next to it. She twirled the flower between her fingers, thoughtful. "The roses look beautiful this year," she said. "It seems that they bloomed faster than expected. Or is it me who wasn't paying attention?" Miguel swallowed. Was it just a casual conversation? Or was Clara trying to say something without saying it directly? Before she could answer, the door of the mansion opened and Helena appeared. She wore a light blue dress and looked calm, but Miguel noticed something in her expression. a stiffness in her shoulders, a look that didn't meet his, as if overnight they had become two strangers. Clara smiled when she saw her sister and handed her the rose. "For you. You look beautiful, don't you think?" Helena picked up the flower slowly, without taking her eyes off it. "It is," he replied with a half-smile. But Miguel watched as his fingers squeezed the stem too tightly, the thorns digging into his skin. A drop of blood appeared on the tip of his finger. Clara sighed as if she was amused. "Be careful, sister. Some beauties hide dangerous thorns." Helena immediately let go of the flower and looked at her sister with a mixture of surprise and irritation. "Since when do you speak in riddles, Clara?" Clara laughed, but her eyes remained attentive. "Don't worry, dear. I always notice things." She turned and entered the house, leaving Helena and Miguel alone. The silence between them weighed heavily on them. He wanted to say something, ask if everything was okay, if she hadn't also slept thinking about what happened. But Helena just pressed her lips, took a deep breath, and said softly, "We cannot repeat what happened yesterday." Miguel felt a tightness in his chest. "Was it a mistake for you?" She hesitated, as if she was fighting what she wanted to say. Then he looked away. "It was a danger," and without another word, Helena turned and returned to the mansion. Miguel stood there, standing, feeling that something had changed. The scent of roses was still in the air, but now it mixed with a different smell, the smell of danger. The day dragged on for Miguel. The weight of Helena's words still echoed in his mind. It was a danger. It hurt more than if she had said she regretted it. Because it wasn't regret, it was fear. But fear of what? He tried to convince himself that it was best to forget what happened. Focus on work, take care of the garden, just be the gardener of the mansion, as it always has been. But this illusion was short-lived. In the afternoon, while watering the hydrangeas at the bottom of the land, he heard voices coming from the balcony. "You've been weird, Helena." Gustavo's voice, her husband, sounded serious. "What's going on?" Miguel stopped immediately, hiding behind a vine. He knew he shouldn't listen, but his heart was already beating too fast to back down. "Strange how?" Helena's voice was firm, but it carried a slight tremor. Distant, restless, as if he were hiding something. There was a brief silence. Miguel imagined Helena looking for the right words. "I'm not hiding anything, Gustavo. I've just been sleeping badly." "Why did you sleep badly?" She was slow to respond. "I don't know. Strange dreams, perhaps?" Gustavo's laugh was low and dry. "Dreams." He paused. "I hope it's nothing else." There was a weight in those words, a hidden warning. Miguel held his breath. Did Gustavo suspect it? Did anyone see them in the greenhouse the night before? Helena did not answer. He just said he was going to rest and entered the house. Gustavo stayed on the balcony for a while longer. Miguel could see him from where he was. He twirled a glass of whiskey in his hand, his eyes fixed on the garden as if searching for something or someone. Miguel looked away and tried to calm his heart, but something inside him said that the tranquility would not last long. Later, while collecting the tools in the greenhouse, Helena appeared. She looked to the sides before entering, making sure they were alone. "You need to be careful," she said quietly. Miguel franziu each. "What do you mean?" "Gustavo. He senses when something is wrong. He perceives things." Miguel crossed his arms. "Do you think he knows?" Helena shook her head nervously. "Not yet, but if he knows..." She didn't finish the sentence, but she didn't have to. Miguel understood what she meant. Gustavo was not a man who accepted betrayal. The silence between them weighed heavily on them. Helena ran her hand through her hair, as if trying to order her own thoughts. "Miguel, we need to forget what happened." "Can you forget?" he asked, staring at her. Helena opened her mouth to answer, but stopped. His eyes said it all. Miguel took a step forward, lowering his voice. "Because I can't..." She closed her eyes for a moment, as if fighting herself. So, instead of answering, she just turned and left, leaving Miguel alone in the greenhouse. He sighed and looked around. The flowers were there, beautiful and silent, but between them, thorns were hidden, and something told Miguel that sooner or later they were going to hurt. Night fell over the mansion, bringing an unsettling silence. Miguel tried to concentrate on his work, but his mind was far away. Helena's nervous look, Gustavo's words, everything seemed like a warning. Walking through the garden, he felt a strange sensation, as if he were being watched. He looked at the house, and it was then that he saw it. Upstairs, behind a half-open curtain, a shadow. His heart raced. Someone was standing there, looking at him. For a moment, Miguel stood still, not knowing what to do. But then, the shadow moved and the curtain was pulled back slowly. Who was it? Gustavo? White? Or Helena? Swallowing, he looked away and headed towards the greenhouse, trying to look natural. But now I was sure. Someone had his eye on him, and that could only mean one thing. The secret that he and Helena tried to hide was no longer theirs alone. That evening, a formal dinner was served at the mansion. The table was impeccable, covered with lighted candles and crystal bowls. Miguel, from afar, watched the bosses gathered. Gustavo was more serious than usual, cutting the meat on the plate with precision. Helena kept her gaze down, touching the food without actually eating. Clara, on the contrary, smiled with a curious twinkle in her eyes. "You're silent today, Helena," Clara said, swirling the wine in the glass. "Something wrong?" Helena forced a smile. "Just a little tired." "Tired? Or distracted?" Clara leaned slightly, watching her sister. Gustavo put down the cutlery and looked directly at Helena. "I realize that too. Is something bothering you?" Helena hesitated. For a moment, his eyes met those of Miguel, who watched from afar, pretending to take care of the plants at the entrance. But it was only a second. She quickly looked away and shook her head. "Of course not. It's okay." Clara smiled sideways, as if she knew something that no one else knew. Miguel felt a chill. Every day the tension grew, and the mask that hid the danger was about to fall. After dinner, Miguel went to the greenhouse to organize the tools. The night was cold, and the wind shook the leaves of the garden, bringing an eerie silence. He bent down to get a watering can when something caught his eye. In the middle of the flowers, on the work table, there was a small folded note. His heart raced. With slightly trembling hands, he unfolded the paper and read, "We met in the greenhouse, midnight. Come alone." Miguel held his breath. There was no signature, but he knew who that delicate handwriting belonged to, Helena. He looked around, making sure no one was around. Then he put the note in his pocket and left, feeling the weight of the warning. She was risking too much, and deep down, he knew. A secret meeting in that house was no longer just a mistake. It was a real danger. The mansion was silent when the clock struck midnight. Miguel left his small room at the back of the garden and walked to the greenhouse, feeling his heart beat faster with each step. When he opened the door, he found Helena already waiting for him. She wore a light dressing gown, her hair loose, and her eyes were filled with urgency. "You shouldn't have come," he whispered, even though he knew she had called him herself. "Then why did you ask me to come?" Miguel closed the door behind him. Helena took a deep breath and looked at the floor before answering. "Because I can't take it anymore." Miguel approached. "What's going on, Helena? Are you afraid of Gustavo? Does he distrust us?" She hesitated. "I don't know, but I feel like we're being watched. And Clara—" Her voice cracked. "Clara knows something." Miguel touched his face carefully. "If she knows, why hasn't she told Gustavo yet?" "Because Clara likes to play." Helena closed her eyes when she felt his touch. "But I know this won't last long." Silence extended between them. Miguel knew it was wrong, but he couldn't resist. He moved even closer until his lips were inches from hers. "If you ask me to leave now, I will. But if you say you want me, I'll stay." Helena closed her eyes for a moment, as if fighting against herself. And then, instead of answering, she just kissed him. But outside the greenhouse, a shadow moved in the darkness. Someone was there, and now there was no turning back. The kiss was interrupted by a dry noise outside. Helena walked away quickly, her eyes wide. "Did you hear that?" he whispered, his breathing quickening. Miguel nodded, feeling a chill down his spine. He looked out the window of the greenhouse, but only saw the darkness of the garden. For a moment, the silence was absolute. Only the rustling of leaves in the wind. And then, steps. Someone was there. Helena put her hand to her mouth, trying to contain her panic. Miguel acted quickly, turning off the only lamp in the greenhouse. "We need to get out of here," he murmured. Helena nodded, and the two moved silently to the side door. But before they could leave, a voice chilled their bones. "Don't worry, I've seen enough." Helena swallowed hard and turned slowly. At the entrance to the greenhouse, Clara watched them with an enigmatic smile. "I knew there was something going on," she said, crossing her arms. "I just wanted to be sure." Miguel felt his heart beat like a drum. "Clara, please," Helena began, her voice trembling. Clara tilted her head, as if she was savoring that moment. "What do you think will happen when Gustavo finds out?" Silence weighed in the air. Helena squinted as if she already knew the answer. And Miguel felt for the first time that the danger was not only in Gustavo's eyes. It was right there, in front of them. Helena swallowed, her eyes fixed on her sister. "Clara, you don't have to do that." His voice was low, pleading. Clara smiled sideways, playing with a lock of hair. "Do what, dear?" "Tell the truth?" She laughed softly. "Don't look at me like that. I'm not the villain of this story." Miguel closed his hands into fists. "What do you want?" Clara took a step forward, looking directly at him. "Clever. You already know that I have something in mind." The silence weighed down. Helena held Miguel's arm as if asking him not to react. Clara sighed, looking at her sister with a false air of pity. "Gustavo trusts me. If I tell him, well, you know what happens to those who betray you." Helena shuddered. Miguel took a step forward, his voice firm. "What's your price, Clara?" She smiled with satisfaction. "I'm still thinking. But don't worry, I won't say anything, at least for now." She turned, walking slowly to the exit of the greenhouse. Before disappearing into the darkness, he cast one last glance at Helena. "You've always been the favorite. It's time to see what it's like to lose everything." And then she was gone. The silence that was left behind was suffocating. Miguel looked at Helena. She trembled. "What are we going to do?" she whispered. Miguel had no answer, but he knew that Clara's game had begun, and they were losing. The following days were hell. Helena tried to act normal, but Clara's every look was a silent reminder of the danger that hung over her and Michael. Gustavo, on the other hand, seemed restless. The silence of the wife, the mysterious smiles of Clara. Something bothered him. That night during dinner, the tension reached the limit. "You're very distracted, Helena," Gustavo said, cutting the meat on his plate harder than necessary. Helena held the glass of wine, trying to keep calm. Clara smiled, leaning back in her chair. "Maybe it's the weight of conscience, don't you think?" Miguel's blood ran cold. Gustavus laid down the carvings on the table and turned to the coffin. "What do you mean by that, Clara?" She twirled the glass between her fingers, savoring the moment. "You've always trusted me, haven't you, Gustavo? And I never wanted to get involved in your wedding. But I think you have a right to know." The silence that followed was unbearable. "Know what?" Gustavo's voice came out cold. Clara looked directly at Helena, then at Miguel. "About your gardener and his wife." Helena turned pale. Miguel closed his eyes, feeling that the moment they feared so much had arrived. Gustavo was standing, his fists clenched, breathing heavily. "You had the audacity to betray me, with a servant?" Helena felt her heart tighten. Miguel didn't look away. "I love your wife," he said firmly. The confession echoed in the hall. Gustavo trembled with anger. Clara, leaning back in her chair, smiled calm. But before Gustavo could do anything, Helena stood up, placing herself between the two men. "It's over, Gustavo." His voice was firm, but his eyes were pleading. "You can hate me, but you can't change how I feel." Gustavo clenched his jaw, his eyes full of fury and pain. "If you walk out that door with him, never come back." Helena looked at Miguel, then at Clara, who just raised her glass of wine, amused. She took a deep breath. "I've never really been here." She took Miguel's hand and left without looking back. The cold night wind enveloped them as soon as they crossed the garden. Miguel's heart was still beating fast, but for the first time, it was not fear. It was freedom. In the distance, the lights of the city shone like promises of a new beginning. Helena shook his hand and smiled, even with tears in her eyes. "Where are we going?" Miguel asked. She looked up at the starry sky, where love doesn't have to be a secret. They didn't know what the future held, but that night, for the first time, they were no longer stuck in the past. Their love had survived, and even marked by pain, he remained free.